make the decisions based on what you're passionate about, almost as if I think I couldn't be an astronaut. That's what I tried to think of, and I think that's the best way to do it, because you're going to do what you like, what you love, and that's going to give you the best chance.
From your experience in space, living in zero gravity for extended periods of time, what's one practical lesson or habit that you've learned on your missions that has significantly impacted your life on Earth?
I don't know if this is practical, but I'll give it, if we can. You can keep asking if you're looking for something else in particular.
We'll get it out of you.
The first thing that comes to mind, I think, is just the way I think about our planet, of where we are. And I think that came from two experiences. One on my first flight, during my second spacewalk on my first flight, looking at our planet. I had a time to take a break in the action. We were working on the Hubble Space Telescope, which is a lot of work. We had to pay attention. But I was able to steal a few moments just to soak in the view. And it was so beautiful. There's no words to describe the planet, but what came to mind was I'm looking into absolute heaven. And it's a paradise. It's absolute paradise. And I can't imagine any place being more beautiful than our planet. And that has stayed with me. And you kind of look at it from afar. I think the view of the planet from space is how it was intended to be seen. It gives you a different perspective. It gives you that perspective that it is a really special place. But I think about that view all the time when I'm on planet Earth, just walking around the city, or if you're out in the country and you see a beautiful scenery, or just buildings or people's faces, or wherever it might be. I think we're living in an absolute paradise, and we should appreciate it every day. And the other thing from my observations was this concept of home. You're a New York guy. I was kind of a New York. I grew up in Franklin Square, Long Island, just outside of the city line.
Oh,
it really wasn't the city, though. Actually, it was suburbs, but not real suburbs. It was kind of in between, right? But it was not the city. And that was my world, was my little town there. And that's where I was from. When I thought of home, it was always there. I wanted to go there after school as my home. Going home from college, I always identify that place with home. And then as I got older and started moving around the country a bit, I think I started identifying myself as a New Yorker. I'm a guy from New York. And then as an astronaut, I was an American. I was representing my country, and I thought of America as my home more globally across the country, I think. But now when I think of home, Max, I think of Earth. Because seeing it as I have seen it and going around it so many times, I started thinking that that's where everything is. That's where everything I've ever known is. That's where you and I are, all of our families. Anyone that has ever lived has been here. And we, as far as we know, maybe there's other people somewhere else, but everybody we know about is here. And future generations and so on, it's all here. We all share this place. So when I think of home, I think of Earth, and it's a place that we all share.
Man.
So I don't know if that's really practical, but I think in some ways it can be. I think it's a good way to think about the place we have, our planet, that we all share it. It's a beautiful place. It's fragile. We need to take care of it.
Well, also in light of like the polarity that you see today in the media, right, and all the fighting that's going on in the world, like it's got to give you it's the perspective that you must have must be. I mean, it clearly is so different than the way I think the rest of us kind of perceive current events and the like.
Yeah, I think the other thing that's interesting is with some of these things that are going on here. What I've found about the space program is that when you have a common goal, you can get along. With the Russians and the U.S. started this. Hang on a second, Max. It was 25 years ago, exactly coming up here. I think in a couple of weeks, but they had the first element launch of the space station, and we've been working together with the Russians before then to build the space station. It's the International Space Station, and it has lots of countries that participate. But there's a Russian segment and there's a U.S. operating segment that includes the United States and Canada and Japan and countries of Europe. All the folks who are in with us, but we've always had this joint work with them. And on every American space launch that goes to the International Space Station, we have a Russian cosmonaut on board. And on every Russian Soyuz launch into the International Space Station, there's an American on board. So despite things that are going on, we still cooperate in space. I don't know if that's going to go on in the future, because that was set up 25 years ago that we need to be still doing that for safety reasons. You need to have both on each spaceship. You need both operating segments represented.
Wow.
So you can't like abandon ship and leave only Russians or only Americans. So
why is that from a
well
safety
because
standpoint?
there's so if you were to go up, say the Soyuz had only Russian people and the U.S. ship, the SpaceX Dragon that goes up there, had only Americans and our partners in there. And then there's something wrong with the spaceship, and they got to get out of there. Like it's an emergency evacuation. And so now it's all the Russians leave. Then you have that whole segment of the space station will be kept. There's some training, cross training, but it's not a good idea to leave that whole section of the space station unattended. Won't work.
So it's almost like you want a diversity in terms of experience, in terms of like the countries that have access to the information that's being gleaned.
And well, in this case, it's the countries, because the Russians are fully trained to handle their segment, and the United States and our partners are trained to handle our segment. There's a little bit of cross training there, but it wouldn't work if there was no one there to take care of things.
Wow.
So for emergencies and other reasons, not just for the science and for whatever else might be going on.
So interesting.
So you're intertwined, and I think that has to continue, and I think that's a good example of how when you can find common ground, you can get along.
Yeah.
That's not happening in other aspects of things, and as I said, I think moving forward, I don't know, unless things change with what's going on in the world. I don't think we'd be doing more joint projects with Russia, which is unfortunate in some ways, but I think it's just a reality of what's happening.
Yeah, I mean, it's a testament to just how powerful we can be as a species when teamed up for a common good.
Yeah, and that was that was a way that after the Cold War was over and the Soviet Union broke apart, that was an opportunity for us to cooperate in peaceful ways. And scientists and engineers across countries are good about collaborating because they have that common interest, those things that they can work on together, and you're more powerful, successful in collaboration than you are doing things on your own.
Well, it's interesting. Like science is sort of a unifying language. It is sort of a universal, a universal truth, right?
Yeah.
It's like music, like great art, right?
Yeah, those are other things too. So, but I guess I'm not as familiar with how you might. I'm sure musicians collaborate on things and so on, but certainly I think anything that is difficult like that, like science or art or big projects or whatever it might be, you're better off with a diverse group of people who have that same passion. And when you can find that, you can agree. And so I think the space program is a good example of that.
It's so cool. Well, I mean, there's so many questions that I want to ask you, but like so many children dream of one day becoming an astronaut, right? But you are in the 0.00001% of people who actually go through with it and become that thing.
Yeah.
Walk me through that.
Very lucky.
Yeah, very lucky.
Yeah.
At what point in your life was this a childhood dream of yours that you just manifested and made reality, or like how did you get into that? Like, how did you become an astronaut?
Yeah, well, there's different paths, right? And when I was a little boy, I was 6 years old. I can remember Neil Armstrong walking on the moon. So I thought that was cool, Max. I didn't just want to go to space. I wanted to be Neil Armstrong. I thought he was like the coolest guy ever, and that's who I wanted to grow up to be like, But anyway, when I got to be about like 8 years old, I didn't think there was any chance of that happening. I'm afraid of heights. I discovered I was afraid of heights when I was 8 years old.
The astronaut's afraid of heights.
Yeah, I don't like heights. And then my eyesight went bad on me, and I can't see very well without my glasses and contacts. And so these are all things that made me think that this is impossible. This is just saying who grows up to be an astronaut? This isn't like a normal career path. So I thought it was impossible. When I was a senior in college, I went to see this movie called The Right Stuff, which is based on a book by Tom Wolfe. So I saw that movie, I read the book. It's about the original 7 astronauts and the test pilots that came before them. It's more about test flying and that sort of stuff, early space program, than it was what was going on at the time. Now, this is now the mid-1980s when I was getting out of college. And I saw that movie, read the book, and it kind of got me thinking again about what I was so interested in as a little boy. And I never really lost interest. I just thought I never could do it. And at this point now, I'm older, and out of college. I was an engineering student because that's what I was interested in doing. I never thought about the space program as a career. I thought that was impossible or just not practical, or how the heck does that happen? Anyway, I started looking into it, and the space program had changed. It wasn't just military test pilots like it was back in the early days. It was now scientists and engineers. The first people of color, the first women were picked to be shuttle astronauts in the late 1970s. And by this time in the mid-1980s, that had been going on for a while. And so I thought, well, maybe this is something I could do. And if not, maybe I could help other people go. I still had no delusions that I would ever become an astronaut. Even to this day, Max, if I see one of my mission patches, I make sure my name is on it. Did I just imagine this whole thing? How did this happen? But I worked for a couple of years in New York City as an engineer, and then went to grad school to try to pursue it. And it's interesting you said about the path. I think that what I realized is that there's, even back then, I could write to NASA. We didn't have the internet back then, right? In 1980s. So I guess I must have written a letter, and I got back like a stack of astronaut biographies. And you could see they were from all walks of life. They had the common thread of being technically oriented people. It still is like that today. So they had some sort of technical background, but it was pretty wide. It could be, I've flown in space with test pilots and engineers and astrophysicists and stuff. But I've also flown in space with a geologist, a field geologist, and with a oceanographer, and with a veterinarian.
Wow.
So it's pretty varied, and so that gives you the freedom then, I think, in this case, to not have to think there's only one way to do it. If you wanted a military career, that's great. That's a good path. If you want to become a medical doctor or whatever you want, you just follow that and then make the decisions based on what you're passionate about, almost as if I think I couldn't be an astronaut. That's what I tried to think of, and I think that's the best way to do it, because you're going to do what you like, what you love. That's going to give you the best chance of becoming whatever that is. Like in the astronaut program, if I was doing, if I felt I needed to be whatever, I don't know, a surgeon or something like that, that would have been really counter to what my natural abilities and interests were. It's not for me, I don't think. And I think that would have not been a good choice, and probably wouldn't have done very well at it. God forbid, that's probably not a good choice. Surgeon, I don't know, something else. An astrophysicist, maybe. I kind of like that stuff, but if I'd have chosen just because I thought that would make me an astronaut, I don't think that would have been a good choice. So I think it's better to choose what you love and pursue it, and always keep an eye on what that goal is and apply like I did. I applied, was rejected twice outright. Third time I was medically disqualified. I got an interview, but then was medically disqualified, and then was able to overturn that. It was a vision issue. I had to I went through some vision training to improve my eyesight, and then was able to requalify and applied a fourth time and got in. The eye requirements have changed since then. So people are listening, want to become NASA astronauts. Don't worry about your vision anymore. As long as you're correctable to 20/20, that's good. But back then you needed good uncorrected vision. I didn't have it. So I got DQ'd, was able to get that overturned to apply a fourth time, and then I got in. So persistence is the other thing. I think it's following a passion and then not giving up when you run into speed bumps, because everybody does.
Everybody does, yeah. What was the application process like? You mentioned that you had written a letter to NASA.
That's what I was when I first started, just to get those bios is what I was talking about. But to apply,
yeah, what was that like?
Max, I can't even remember how we found out about things back then, because now everything is on the internet, or you're on some kind of, I don't know, Facebook page or so. I don't know.
Yeah.
But they would announce that they were looking for astronauts. How I found out about it, I think I just called and asked, and they send you. This is what it was. They sent me the application. So the application is a standard 171 form, a government standard 171 form. I think it might still be the same form. We'd have to check it out.
Yeah, we'll check it out.
But it was a form that you had fill out with a typewriter. I haven't seen a typewriter have you ever seen a typewriter in your life? Have you ever seen one in your house? You seem like a young guy.
Yeah,
have you ever seen one?
When I was a kid, yeah.
When you were a kid, you saw.
You
don't have one here in this place.
Definitely
let's just say. No, and this is back when I was now I'm going back maybe 12 years ago. I was at NASA and I needed a typewriter. I couldn't find one at NASA 12 years ago.
Wow.
But you would sit at a typewriter, I guess, with whiteout when you made mistakes, or use a pen and fill this thing out.
Wow.
And then there was so it was a standard form, which was just your experience. It was a standard government form. So it was for like any job in the government, I think you had to do this. And it was fill out your jobs, your education, put down some references, your supervisors at each jobs, all that stuff. And then there was some supplemental stuff that you could add. I think like you could put stuff about your hobbies or interests. If you did any flying, if you had any flying experience, or any special certifications or skills and that kind of thing.
But at the time, were you cognizant of how insane of a thing that must have likely seemed from the outside?
Yep. Oh yeah, no, it seemed insane to me. It seemed insane to me the whole time, pretty much. Like I said, even now I can't believe it happened because it was such a stretch. This is what was interesting, Max. When I think of Neil Armstrong and those guys, and I've gotten to meet him and know him. He passed, unfortunately, years ago. But you take that first step, even though it seems totally ridiculous, and then not that it seems like it can happen, but it doesn't seem so nutty. Like even when I went to grad school, I went to grad school at MIT, so it's kind of like coming out here to LA, I guess, if you want to be an actor or an actor, this is probably a good place to be, right?
Yeah.
I think, right? You want to be in the entertainment business, on television or whatever. This is probably a good place to be. And it's
still
not so nutty.
A moonshot, no pun intended.
It's still it's probably even great. I mean, anything you want to do that's worthwhile is not going to be easy. But it almost seems normal around here because so many people are involved in the entertainment business. Well, at MIT, it was normal that people would do things in the technology area like become astronauts. There's a lot of astronauts who went to MIT and a lot of people that wanted to be. So it started to take on a different kind of a different perspective on it that people do these things. They may not, there's different paths. It may not be common, but here it almost seemed somewhat normal there at a place like that. And then when I started meeting astronauts, especially after grad school, I was working at the Johnson Space Center. I really liked them and I got along with them. I found that they were just good people. They weren't these superhero people that I thought they were. They were really, in some ways they are. They were a great group of people, but they were just hardworking, honest for the most part, passionate about what they were doing, dedicated, good people that you could count on, that I enjoyed being around, that I found myself feeling very comfortable around them. I felt like they were people you could trust, that you could work with, that you'd want to be on the team with them. And I think a lot of times we have an impression of what people are supposed to be like, right? I can never be like that. Well, yeah, but that's only in your mind. That's not the reality of it. And I found that the reality of it is that the more I learned about them and the more people I got to know in the space program, again, and maybe it was that common ground we talked about earlier, it just seemed to feel comfortable. And I felt good about it. Not that, again, that I ever thought it would be possible, but it just didn't seem as crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, at that point.
It's such an incredible but also like ridiculous endeavor when you really like think about it. You're shooting yourself up into space.
Yeah, that's the other part of it.
Like as a novice astronaut, is there anything that stands out to you as being part that you had to endure as being particularly absurd, funny, ridiculous?
I think I don't know if I think a lot of it seemed crazy, but then it becomes normal. So if you think about blasting yourself off on a rocket ship, Max, that probably seems nuts, right? Or doing a spacewalk, or flying around on a high performance jet, with a helmet and an oxygen mask, and doing your training underwater for a whole day.
I think skiing is ridiculous. Like hurling yourself down a mountain at 50 miles per hour.
That's a little crazy.
We can agree on that.
What's that?
Yeah, we can agree on that.
But skiing. Yeah, skiing.
No shade to skiers.
I enjoy it, but I'm not trying to. I don't want to get hurt, and there's too many people out there, and these little kids use me as a pole, as like an obstacle pole. If you think it's ridiculous, why though, Max? Let me understand
just the risk to me doesn't
I see.
Commensurate.
Okay.
With the joy that I would, you're freezing.
Yeah.
Can't feel your face. You end the day soaking wet, or at least
and you're paying for this,
and you're
it's
paying.
Expensive.
It's an expensive hobby.
Yeah.
And the risk is just so vast, for me.
Okay, so I'm with you on that. So I'm not necessarily a thrill seeker. When I'm the slowest driver I know. Drives my wife nuts. I even drive like a golf. I don't play golf very often, but when I do, I'm allowed to. If they don't know any better, they'll let me drive off, and then they won't after like hole number 3. They're like, we can't take this because I'm very cautious in that way. And My wife she had a significant birthday a couple of years ago. She wanted to jump out of an airplane.
Wow.
Right? Yeah. So she says, wouldn't it be great if we could do this together? And I was like, that would be great. But that's not happening. I am not, if the airplane is working, I'm not getting out unless it's on fire. Max, even if it's on fire, I've got to be sure that I'm going to die in that airplane. Even when I'm talking about with a parachute. I mean, if you don't have a parachute, you got to figure out how to get the airplane on the ground,
wow.
right? Something's got to happen.
Damn.
But I would never do anything like that. I think, but what you said, I thought was I thought important there, at least, and I agree with you with, is that you need to see the importance of it or why you're doing it. So I was perfectly fine putting my rear end on a rocket ship because I felt the space program was that important. And I think people should feel that way about what they're doing. I think there's going to be a risk in anything you're going to do. It might be financial risk, personal risk, it could be whatever it could be. It could be dangerous. But I think it's good to be so passionate about what you're doing that you're willing to take some sort of risk to do it. I don't, not a crazy risk, but I felt it was worth whatever risk was involved. For me, it was a fulfillment of a dream, but also I felt that strongly about the space program. And I think it's sad if you don't feel that strongly about something that you're not willing to take a risk for it. So I don't think it was a foolhardy risk. So some people ask me, like, would I go to space now? And I'm like, well, why am I going? Am I going to fix Hubble Space Telescope again? Am I going to go do some research on the space station? Am I going to do something for educational outreach? I mean, it needs to be a purpose for me to take that kind of risk. I wouldn't just do it for the heck of it. So I thought there was a real purpose in what I was doing and was willing to do it. Because I'm not a thrill seeker, man. There were some guys that were. Some people I worked with that kind of were, but I was not one of those.
Well, it's very funny because there's definitely a part of you that is very like James Bond, like Moonraker, But then to hear your reluctance to do these other things, I think is very comforting, because at the end of the day, you are very much a superhero, but you're also very much a human, like you're very human. That's why I think you're, like this book is so incredible and why you've become such a big, and powerful spokesperson outside of your work in space, right? Because you're very relatable.
I would like to think that's true because there's nothing special about me, Max. And the title of the book, Moonshot, hopefully gives the impression that it's trying to achieve something that you might not normally think is possible. Yeah. But it is, and it's at least worth the attempt. Things that are what we think are beyond our grasp. I think to at least try and do your best at it and not give up. I think that's what matters. I think that's how you avoid regret. I think giving up and not even trying is really not a good way to go. And there's nothing special about me, or quite frankly, with any of the other people I work with who are astronauts, or I think a lot of people who are able to achieve things in their life that they've always wanted to do. They just have perseverance, and there may be things to learn. That's what I try to share in the book. Things I learned about teamwork, not giving up, knowing when to speak up, knowing when to pivot, dealing with change, and so on. Things that help me, hopefully will be helpful to other people. And the perseverance thing, I've been thinking about the book a lot lately because we're talking about it, and there's 10 chapters in there, and the first one is mainly what we've talked about with the giving up, not giving up, and all that. But the rest of it were really things that I learned after I got to the astronaut office, because I think the thing that we want to remember here, and what was told to me by people like Neil Armstrong and Alan Bean, who was the fourth person to walk on the moon, and Jim Lovell and these other guys who were my heroes when I was a little boy, the Apollo astronauts, was that becoming an astronaut was great, but it's an opportunity. And the achievement of actually becoming an astronaut, although it was not easy, and I think the most difficult thing about being an astronaut is becoming one. It's what you do with the opportunity. And I didn't really think it sunk in until recently with me, like in the last, writing the book, or the last year or so, maybe realizing that all those guys came back to talk to us with kind of the same sort of message. The ones who really wanted to help us, let's say, who wanted to come back and share, not just we did this on the moon, but about what these were the successful guys, right? Is that you're given this great opportunity. And I remember my friend Alan Bean, the fourth guy to walk on the moon, was also an artist, and he painted his experiences and his sort of second career after retiring from NASA was that everyone in life wants to do something great. And that when he spoke to our astronaut class early on, he said, each one of you has been given the opportunity to do something great. And it's up to you to see what you can do with it, because you really have won the lottery when, like you're saying, it's that 1 out of a million thing. And I remember my first day at work, Bob Cabana was the chief of the office, a Marine Corps test pilot who was loved. He became a very good friend. He stayed with NASA after he was finished flying in space, ran the Kennedy Space Center. He's just retiring now up at NASA headquarters. But I remember he welcomed us. There was 35 Americans and 9 international astronauts, and he was telling us that he welcomed us our first day, and he said, "We're very happy to have you all here. We're thrilled at this group. But for every one of you, there are thousands of people who this morning would trade places with you in a second. And the only difference between you and them is that you are more fortunate than they are. And you owe it to them to do your best to make the most of this opportunity." And that's really what the rest of the first, the first is about not giving up on a goal, but the second is using that same perseverance when you get that goal to be successful with it.
Yeah.
And once you get that opportunity, whether it's whatever, finishing your education or getting your podcast or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
People would love to trade places with you to have a podcast like you have, right? Right, Max? I would think.
Yeah, but you're right. I'm the biggest advocate of people actually launching their own podcasts.
You go.
I could say, well, the world doesn't need any more podcasts, which would be just me kind of, protecting what it is that I've built I think that would probably be a display of like a scarcity mindset, but I think abundance mindset is way more powerful, man.
I agree with you, and I think once you achieve whatever it is, whatever that might be, whatever that goal is, and now you have an opportunity to do something with it, you need that same type of perseverance, and don't ever feel. I mean, that what I was told, I think, by all those guys, the underlying message was, don't ever feel entitled or that you deserve anything.
Right.
No, because you never felt that way while you were pursuing the goal.
Yeah.
You were hungry. And now that you have the goal, now's really your opportunity to do something with it.
And it can be taken away from you at any time.
It can go quickly. Yeah, that's absolutely correct.
If you had to do it all over again, if you had to start over, would you?
No, absolutely not. No, that took me too long. No, what do you mean? Like do so,
knowing how difficult it was.
Yeah.
If you could go back in time and do it all again, knowing though, in advance what it is that it's going to take.
Yeah.
Would you do it?
Oh yeah, no, I do it again. I mean,
you do it again.
No, yeah. I mean, I wonder about but I don't know. No, wait a minute. Would I want to do it again?
Yeah.
No, I'm change things or to relive it.
To relive it.
Oh well, like going back and you can't do that, Max. So I don't think I try not to think about that. But no, I don't think I would. I am happy with how everything turned out.
Love it.
And I would not I don't think the sacrifice was too much. I never thought it wasn't anything I did wasn't worth it. We didn't make a whole heck of a lot of money as astronauts. We were that government form we filled out. We also got government salary, so we were paid as civil servants. No hazardous duty pay.
Probably
no
good
overtime.
Pensions and benefits and stuff, right?
But just like a regular government employee. Nothing special about us. The only thing we did get, Max, was when we went to space.
But those speaking fees afterwards.
That's different. You're no longer a government employee. You're no longer a government employee. But while you're with the government, you can't do any of that stuff. But the only thing we got was when we traveled to space, we have travel orders, just like we would when we travel somewhere. And it said, when you go to you have to sign them. It's from Kennedy Space Center, Florida, to low Earth orbit and return, because that's where you're going. I felt good about the return. At least they wanted to get me back. And it said lodging provided, meals provided. You're going to sleep on a spaceship. Meals provided. Everything was provided except for incidental expenses. $3 a day. They couldn't figure out how to zero that out. So you got $3 a day for every day spent in space. When you got back, you got to check $3 a day. And the best part about it, it was considered a reimbursement, so it was not taxable.
Not taxable.
Yeah, now that I've said that, if the IRS is listening, they're probably going to start taxing these poor people.
Damn.
So, but no, I wouldn't change anything. I mean, I'm really glad that I wouldn't have to go through it again because I'm like, oh man, like I don't think I could do it again. I don't know. I don't know. It just seemed like it was so fortunate the way everything worked out. I wouldn't change anything.
Yeah.
And as far as like going back, I don't know. I mean, I think there were some moments I really miss, which is kind of strange because you would think it'd be my time in space, which I do miss, but it's also the camaraderie and the problem solving and what we did on the ground with our engineers and our instructors and the flight control team. I really miss that. So when I first left the astronaut office, I used to dream about going back to space. I still dream about that once in a while at night when I'm sleeping. But now it's more of, wow, it'd be really cool just to go back and
how many trips have you taken?
Problem. Two trips. Shuttle missions.
Wow.
Yeah. So, what I feel that it allows me to like relive it. You're saying would I relive it? I feel like I'm reliving it right now with you.
Yeah, I love that.
And I relive it writing the book, and I relive it when I'm teaching my classes at Columbia. So I get to relive all that stuff. I saw Bruce Springsteen had a show he was doing in New York City, in like a Broadway theater. Did you get to see it?
Him. Yeah, no, I didn't. But he's great.
Yeah, he's great, right? And it was, at first I was like, what is it? Because, it's not a concert, really. I mean, it is, he sings his songs, but he tells his stories. And at first I was a little skeptical, but it was awesome, right? And what I remember he said at the end was, he tells stories about his mom and his dad and about Clarence, the sax player and all these other things that he did. And he says, I miss all those things, but I get to relive them every night. So thank you for listening. So thank you for listening, Max.
Yeah.
If anyone else is listening to this, thank you, because I feel like I get to relive it by doing this. You can't go back there and do it and start over again, but you can relive it by sharing the lessons learned from it.
Yeah.
And hopefully it's useful.
Well, I don't know how much you want to relive this necessarily, but I do have to ask, how do you go to the bathroom in space?
Yes. Good question. Similar to the way we do it here.
But here we have like gravity, right?
You don't have that going for you. But okay, so when we number one, let's start with number one with peeing. Okay, so we just pee into a hose. So it's not like it's going to float around that stuff because it's got a bit of a force coming out of it. When you're peeing, there's a stream coming out of there.
There's a force, yeah.
It's shooting out of there, right out of your body.
Yeah.
Whatever your anatomy is, right? It's going to come flying out of there. So you aim that into a hose with a funnel to help so you don't get.
And the hose is like a vacuum, like is like.
There's a little bit of
like an active
pressure
suction.
There. Yeah, just a little bit, just so that the urine doesn't go all over the place. So keep it going in the right direction. But you pee into a funnel. On the space shuttle,
is it the same funnel for both men and women?
On the shuttle, we had different types based on your anatomy. There was a boy's funnel and there was a girl funnel.
Wow.
Right. So on the space station, it's one funnel fits all. It's a big yellow funnel, and that works for anybody. On the biggest difference between the two systems, the space shuttle, we would collect the urine and then dump it. They would do a urine dump, and the urine would go out to space.
Wow.
On the space station, they recycle the urine. They don't have they don't have fuel cells. On the shuttle, we had fuel cells with liquid hydrogen and oxygen would create water as a byproduct. We had plenty of drinking water. They use solar panels on the space station, so they have no easy way of creating water like we did on the shuttle. So on the space station, you have to recycle your water.
Because fuel cells create water?
Yeah, fuel cells are like liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen, and they would do a chemical reaction to create power, and then the byproduct was really good drinking water. So we had plenty of drinking water on the shuttle. But it was a consumable power source because it was liquid hydrogen. You run out of that stuff after a couple of weeks, and that's not good. So whereas the sun's energy, the solar arrays, that's almost like a limitless source as long as they don't get damaged.
Right.
You do the right thing there. But you don't create any water with the solar array. So they have to recycle their water, which means you pee into it as you pee into the system, and then it gets treated and cleaned, and you'll drink it again tomorrow.
And you drink it.
I never went to the space.
How does that taste?
I didn't drink it in space. So I didn't go to a space station. Not for that reason, though. But I did drink it on the ground, and it tastes fine.
It tastes fine.
You cannot tell the difference.
Good to know.
Yes. So, but I make sure you're dealing with a good system. I wouldn't just drink pee.
No.
I don't think that's a good thing.
No.
But it was treated and clean, and it was all right. So as my friend Don Pettit says, what are you drinking there?
That was an iced coffee.
Okay, so today's coffee is tomorrow's coffee.
Today's
We're
coffee is
drinking
tomorrow's
it
coffee.
again.
Oh, man. Okay, so that's number one.
That's number one. Number two, to poop.
Yeah.
So on the space shuttle, we had this very elaborate toilet. where elaborate meaning you had to turn it on. There was a lot of ways to break it. You had one of the last refresher briefings we got was how to use the toilet, because you don't want to break the toilet because you can't have this stuff floating around.
No.
But it was a very small hole, so your aim had to be really good, and it was this kind of big contraption thing, and it's not a flush toilet, but you'd poop in there, and then you would close this little opening, right, and clean up, and
is there like a vacuum aspect to that?
There's like a vacuum as well in there as well to try to keep it down there because you don't want this stuff floating around. But you got to be. You were like. Your aim was very important here, Max. So the way we were trained to use that thing is that there was a special room. There was an actual toilet, space toilet you could practice on, and then we had a training toilet right next to it. Again, not a flush toilet. It's kind of like a big round thing with a seat on top, and the poop goes in a small. But the aim was really important.
I wonder if I can Google this.
Yeah, there's actually
Is there a name for it? Space
we used
toilet?
to call it the WCS, the waste containment system.
Waste containment system.
That was for the shuttle.
Ooh, yeah.
But our trainer had this, the seat.
Is it like this kind of thing?
That's the shuttle one right there.
That's the shuttle one. All right. We'll have to.
I think that's me doing that.
No way.
I think so.
Here, I'm going to see if I can point it towards the audience.
That's not me pooping or anything, but I think we did like a.
Wow.
Yeah, we did a.
So you sit on this thing,
like
which
just of this thing.
Just describing it for a listener. I mean, it looks like a huge tank with just like a thing for you to put your butt on.
Right.
Those look like ass cheeks. So you put your butt.
Yeah, that's the toilet seat.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
And so your aim's got to be really good.
The aim's got to be really good. So the training. So they had one that really worked. You could crap in it, right?
Yeah.
But the one next to it, you wouldn't want to poop in because there was a camera looking up.
Damn.
And that was used, and there was a little TV
Intimate.
over here. Yeah, so you would make sure the door's locked, and then you would kind of align yourself and then get the feeling of what it felt like.
Got it.
So I remember like getting myself in that thing and then getting my aim right, and then you have to memorize the body position for when you get to space. So there was a movie called Easy Rider that came out like in the 60s. You ever see this thing?
No.
The guy was on a chopper. Peter Fonda was the actor. He's on his chopper, and I felt like I was Peter Fonda on a chopper. So when I got to space, I put that position. That would align my butt because now I don't have a camera looking at me to align it, and that's how we did it.
Damn.
Yeah.
Thank God for gravity.
Gravity makes it a lot easier.
Makes it a lot easier.
In fact, one of the stories in the book, I was told, I tell the story that I was flying in a T-38 with John Young, who was in the second group of astronauts and had 6 space flights. First commander of the space shuttle. He's a legend. Walked on the moon, right? And only 12 guys walked on the moon. He was still an active astronaut when I became an astronaut in 1996. And he was still flying in the front seat of our jet trainer. So I was able to fly with him a couple times. And on one of our training flights, we were coming back home from California and flying over New Mexico, and it was kind of quiet and sun was going down, and I finally got up the nerve to ask him, the big question, what was it like on the moon? And he said, well, Mike, the best thing about it is you can finally take a dump because you're floating around up there, and things are and your digestion is a little messed up because everything's gravity helps us poop as well.
Interesting.
Helps keep things going. And he said, he was having trouble those first couple of days on the way to the moon in zero gravity. And once they landed, they got 1/6 gravity, and that was enough to make things click.
So in space, do you feel like I want to hear about like the kinds of foods that you would eat and drink and things like that? But do you feel like you're just like constantly bloated or like constipated or?
I think you would if you weren't careful about
Diet.
Yeah, exactly. So. Really gassy things probably are going to be good, but you want to try to get yourself on a pretty good diet ahead of time, and try to keep things regular. So we would take supplements like Metamucil to help and kind of get that going a couple weeks ahead at least. Get that kind of training because it's really good to go once in the morning and that's it.
Yeah.
So then because it was very complicated. Going to the bed, you want to be doing it every hour. And here it's not that big of a deal. You got to go. But there was a bigger. It was unbelievable.
It's a production.
It's a production. So you want to eat right. But dried fruit. We didn't have much fresh fruit on board. We didn't have refrigeration. They do have a refrigerator they can use on the space station, but still fresh fruit and that kind of stuff is a bit limited. So, but yeah, you want to eat healthy and keep things moving and keep yourself well hydrated. And it's good to get into that routine on Earth, so you're not trying to adapt in space.
What are the kinds of foods that you bring up with you? Like all
everything
prepared stuff?
Yeah, it was very good though. I'm one of only 2 astronauts I know about who gained weight in space.
Really?
Yeah, I really like the food. We had macaroni and cheese, spaghetti and meat sauce, ravioli, lasagna. I haven't had lunch yet. You've just had lunch, so
just
you're
had
okay.
lunch. Yeah,
I'm getting hungry thinking about it. Shrimp cocktail.
Now, is it like the real thing, or is it like some dehydrated space version of the real thing?
Like macaroni and cheese is a dehydrated food item, but macaroni and cheese is kind of dehydrated anyway. It's pasta. You got to boil it, right?
Fair.
So what you're doing is you're adding water to this stuff, and then you let it soak in for about 15 minutes. And then you more or less have macaroni and cheese.
Wow!
And it's just maybe not like the best restaurant in the world, but it's very easy to cook.
Yeah,
and you don't have to prepare, add ingredients or anything. So
what is it like?
Just heat it up.
What is it like re-entering? That's at least in movies, it's portrayed as the most terrifying part of the whole experience.
Launch is terrifying because you got fire underneath the rock, underneath you going to space. And so we always felt that launch was where you might more likely to get killed, right? Right. So and then landing seemed to be a little bit more routine. The shuttle came back. It was a glider coming back. But then we had the accident, the second shuttle accident. The first one was on launch back in 1986. And then the second accident, that was before I was an astronaut, but then after I became an astronaut, we lost Space Shuttle Columbia. After the flight, I was on Space Shuttle Columbia, my first flight. The next time Columbia went to space, it didn't come back. They had taken damage on the way on ascent and didn't know about it. It had a hole in the wing they didn't know about. And when you slow down in the atmosphere, the scary part about it is that you're slowing down so much. You're going 17,500 miles an hour in orbit, and then you got to slow down and be doing about 300 miles an hour over the threshold of the runway. We're still pretty fast, but a lot less than 17,000. So the way you slow down is when you hit the atmosphere, it's friction. It's like putting the brakes on. So it's all friction, which builds up thousands of degrees of heat.
Right.
So there's like a fire going on out there. So when I was on the flight deck on my second flight for coming in for entry, it was pretty cool actually. You do the burn to deorbit on the other side of the planet, like 180 degrees on the other side. And you're lowering your altitude. So you slow down with that burn. And then you actually speed up a little bit as you come in. And then you start slowing down as you pick up the thicker part of the atmosphere. So what's going on out there is it goes through like different phases, but there's one part where the heat is high and the particles are being accelerated around the spaceship and they start to get really hot, right? This like plasma is getting really, really burning red orange. And I could see if I held this, I held up a mirror because you have mirrors to see switches and stuff. Oh, because you can't always see everything. You see what's going on. It's very useful to have a mirror on a stick to see stuff, right? So I'm holding it up, and I could see over the overhead window. I could see the tail of the space shuttle burning red hot in the mirror, and I started to film it.
Oh my god!
Right, and I was like, that's kind of scary. So I stopped after a few seconds of that. But you can see that you could see that glow going on.
Oh my god!
So that's the thing is that it gets awfully hot outside.
Wow!
But you're inside, so as long as the spaceship stays intact, you're okay. But it was not as terrifying. My first flight, it was kind of like, well, we made it through launch, and then we talked about it. The next most dangerous thing we thought was going to be our spacewalks. We've never lost anybody on a spacewalk. We've been lucky so far. It's been a long, many spacewalks have been conducted. But that's another option. You're going out to the vacuum of space in your spacesuit. And we come close. We've had some emergencies, but we've never lost anybody. So that was the other where you're kind of your antenna is up to make sure.
How might you lose somebody? Just like
if you ever have like
a suit.
Yeah, no. If you would have somehow have a leak in the suit, which could be caused by a micrometeorite strike or a sharp edge cut or something like that. Anything, or for whatever reason, if there's a malfunction in the suit is modular, so there's a lot of like rings that twist and get locked, and if there's anything that's compromised, we have to be really careful. Any leak at all, the bladder inside of the suit, it's like a thick sort of plastic rubbery thing, kind of like a rubber glove sort of, but thicker than that, and that's what lines the suit. So you have to be really careful with that. If you have a hole in that, you can get a pressure leak as well.
So the margin of error is like there is zero margin of error.
You've got to be really careful. If you get a leak, you do have time. The way the suit works, still the same suit, is that if you have a leak, it'll go to a secondary oxygen system, which will feed the leak at a high pressure. It'll keep you alive. But you typically the rule of thumb was you have 30 minutes to get inside. So with not a complete, like if your helmet comes off, you're done. But if you have like what would be considered a reasonable leak, you have about 30 minutes to get inside.
Yeah,
and you'll be okay. But we almost lost a guy, our friend Luca Parmitano. There was a problem. The air cooling, so the cooling system that you have is a fancy pair of long underwear that has tubes on it for cooling water, and then there's also air that you need to breathe, and all of it is kind of connected, because when you breathe air, you breathe out, and there's going to be moisture in the air. So some of the water is taken out of the air because it goes through like an air conditioner, gets scrubbed for CO2 and so on. So that water gets taken out and gets put into the water system. And there's also air bubbles in the water system that get taken out, put in the air. So they're all interconnected. Well, one of the pump malfunctioned. It's a little baby pump, but it's miraculous because it could do all these things. It's the only thing you hear is it's called the cooling fan. You'll hear that hum when you're spacewalking. But his malfunctioned, and it started to mix some of the water with the air system. So he had water coming in over the vent, which the vent that would provide fresh air to him to anyone in spacewalk is right over your head, and water was coming out of there. And it ended up building up so much water that he nearly drowned.
Oh my God!
Can you imagine? So it was an emergency and abort to get him inside, and until they fixed that problem, we weren't able to spacewalk.
But he made it in all good.
He made it in, yeah. He got it, but we never would have suspected that would happen. We thought it would be, as I described, it would be. We were always worried about something like something happening to the suit. You get hit by a micrometeorite or piece of debris and it punctures your suit and you start leaking air.
Damn.
That's like the obvious thing. You never thought you'd drown.
It's terrifying. Terrifying.
That would suck.
Yeah. What advice do you have for people trying to overcome personal fears and obstacles? Because I feel like, all these kinds of experiences, encounters, brushes with death, is terrifying.
I think brushes with death and so on. I actually think those are good things to avoid, maybe. But, however, I would say sometimes those things are in your path. So I didn't like heights. I still don't like heights very much. But I was going to have to do things at height and get used to things like I've never jumped out of an airplane, but we had to go through parachute training where we parasailed, for example. And that was out of my comfort zone, but that was my path to becoming an astronaut. I could not do that. I had to go through that training. Or some of the work we did, we'd like go on these field trips, sort of these out in the field. We did like a canyoneering trip where there was a lot of rappelling and rock climbing, and I was not feeling that good there either. In that case, we were out there for 2 weeks, and I wasn't feeling good about this. I was like, this is kind of getting on my nerves, all this up and down mountain cliffs and everything. So I asked one of my buddies for help, who was very comfortable in doing that stuff. And we during one of our breaks, we kind of went around the corner of the mountain to a rock face, and he held my hand and we walked around it, and he made me jump, actually, like jump, just jump, get off your feet and see you can land and be fine. And then I was doing it, so I built up my confidence I'd be okay. So like a lot of things we might think are scary is just we don't know about them. People are able to do these things, and we were well trained. And we were talking about earlier about like the things we would do that might seem scary now, or because you don't know about them, you get trained to do them and they're normal. Like flying in a jet is fine, and doing a spacewalk was fine, and launching in a rocket ship is fine, because we were trained so well to do it that it seemed normal, and it's safe if you know how to do it. And so I would say that if there's things that are, again, you don't need to go, like I said, I wasn't going to go jumping out of an airplane with my wife for the heck of it. That would have been a very nice memory, but I'll take a picture on the ground. I'll even fly the airplane if I can. I'm not going to jump out of it, because I didn't see a purpose there. But a lot of times I think where we have to think about it is when things like that are in our way. If your fear of heights is going to prevent you from becoming an astronaut or doing whatever you want to do, you got to figure out a way to do it. If you don't like chemistry and you need that to become a medical doctor, well, you're going to have to figure out a way to do it, and you have to somehow reach out for help. And I think reaching out for help is the way I overcame a lot of things that I thought were obstacles. Asking people for opinion, seeing what I could find that would help me and get the right experience, because I didn't know about a lot of the things I was doing, even trying to get over the problem I had with my medical disqualification. I don't know how to, and there was no clear way to do that. They didn't accept any kind of surgery or anything. So I found out about some vision training that I could do that might work, and it did.
Wow.
So I think you just have to see if it's how important it is to you, and if something is your passion or what you want to do, expect that there's going to be things that you're not going to be good at, or you're going to be out of your comfort zone, and just meet them head on. And you can do it. I mean, I had to do stuff I felt very uncomfortable with. Some of the underwater tests I had to do, the swimming tests that we had to go through, the dealing with the heights that I had to deal with. I didn't like any of that stuff. A lot of stuff I loved. I liked the spacewalk training. I loved all the shuttle systems training and the robotics and the flying in the jet. Man, I loved all that stuff. There's a lot of stuff I didn't like, but I met a lot of people who had similar issues. Even like a lot of pilots don't like heights. They don't like walking around. The idea of walking around on a ledge or something, and they don't like that. They're okay with flying an airplane. But so we all have our comfort zones, and we also have things we're not comfortable with. And you may never actually get really comfortable with it, but you have to figure out a way to get around it. Because if it prevents you from doing whatever your goal is, that's not acceptable. Because there's really nothing that really can stand in your way. You got to figure out a way to get around it. It's going to be uncomfortable. It might be really freaking hard. You might fail at it many times. But if you stick to it, you'll eventually figure out a way to get around that obstacle. And even if you don't ever figure out a way to get around it, you got to keep trying. Because once you give up, I think that's where the failure happens. As long as you're trying, you haven't failed.
I love that. It's so true. And it's like, it sounds like it's really important to soberly approach, to keep your goal in mind, right? Like if your goal is X and you can't not do Y to get to X, then you have your answer. You have to do Y.
You have to do Y. Yeah. And I think I gave a talk one time. I forget what the company was, but as I was leaving, the CEO, whoever went up there and said, "What did we learn from Mike?" And one of the people raised their hand and said, "He had to do a lot of stuff he didn't like doing," and it's kind of what it is. There's I wanted to fly in space, and I really enjoyed. I wanted to be a spacewalker, and I wanted to fly in the airplanes, the jets, and all that stuff. That was all fun and games to me, and I would really enjoy that. But there were things in order to do that, like the swim test and the scuba qualification, and some of the other things that I didn't enjoy very much. And that was out of my comfort zone. But I hadn't experienced those things before. But there were people there to help. I think that's the thing to keep in mind, too, is that I think we're trainable to do almost anything if we're interested in learning. Even like leadership, for example, leaders are born or whatever. I think you can get training in that. We were trained in that. I mean, and it's understanding yourself and what would make you an effective leader. We went on these excursions I described with the National Outdoor Leadership School. I did a few of these things. One was a kayaking course, and we did the canyoneering course. I did a cold weather course with the Canadian Army, a few other astronauts.
Wow.
We were cold. But it was all about being in an uncomfortable environment and learning your leadership qualities that come natural to you, and also how to be a follower. I mean, I think these are things we can be taught if we're inclined to want to learn them. And sometimes you have to, whether you like it or not. It's part of your job or part of the path to get you where you want to go. You just got to do it.
Yeah.
And reach out and get help. And then once you start learning it, I found like a lot of these cases, to much of my surprise, I kind of enjoyed it. It was kind of fun, or at least the pursuit of it. There's a story I tell about going through the swim test where I wasn't a strong swimmer, but we were told when we first arrived at NASA we had to get through the swim test, and I was concerned about it But before we took the swim test, which was going to be on a Monday, the Friday before we were going to go home, it was our first week. The swim test was going to start our training. Jeff Ashby, a Navy pilot who was in the class before us, was helping us with our training. And he asked before he dismissed us to go home for that weekend, he said, who are the strong swimmers in this group? And a few people raised their hand. And he said, who are the weak swimmers? And I raised my hand and I wasn't alone. And he said, okay, everyone else can go home, but the strong swimmers and the weak swimmers are going to get together and you're going to meet at a pool over the weekend. Strong swimmers are going to help the weak swimmers with their swimming. When we go to the pool on Monday, no one leaves the pool until everyone passes the test. And that to me made me realize I'm in a different world now. You could be really good at something, but your job is to help others become good as well at, or at least acceptable performance, because we all need to be able to do these things. And also as the weak person, it made me realize that I need to speak up if I need help. Like I think a lot of times it's easier for us to give help to others. Oh, let me show you how to do that, right? Like you encourage people to get their podcasts going and all that stuff, right? But what happens when we need help? Yeah. And a lot of times people don't want to admit to that. That was really bad. If you needed help and didn't admit it, what you were doing was hurting the team. So if you're hurt and couldn't physically do something, if you were having trouble with some concept, you didn't understand what was going on, and try to fake it or whatever, and then all of a sudden, you get out on a mission or you fly in a plane, and that's not a good situation. You're hurting other people as well. Yeah. So your job was to admit it when you needed help. Wow. And help was there for you. And so these were important for us to know, because we could not do our job safely and achieve our success without these rules and guidelines in place that I learned after I became an astronaut. But I think these are also good things for everybody to know, that everyone needs help. Everyone's going to be scared of crap that, for no reason, just goes out of their comfort zone. Reach out and get help with those things. Don't let those things stop you. And think of it as it's not just you that's being affected. It's your family and your kids, or people around you, or your team. You have to seek help when you need it. And we're all going to have things we're comfortable with and other things that we're not.
Yeah, and this applies to so many things. Like, even from the standpoint of mental health, right? Like, like knowing when to ask for help. Yeah. With regard to, therapy. I think is crucially important. Being open and vulnerable, and being willing to talk to your friends about, and open up to your friends about things that are going on internally.
Yeah, absolutely. After the accident we had with Columbia, we were not allowed to go back and fly in the airplane until we went and saw a mental health person.
Really?
Sure. Yeah, because we had gone through this traumatic stuff and people were distracted. And then it also became part of our annual physical, where you would go every year. We had to go through a day of whatever, like a typical physical, maybe a little more intense than what you get in a regular doctor's office. But then it also included a check-in with the mental health professional. So, yeah, I think it's important to realize, because you not just affect, even if you don't want to look at it from your health is important, which it is, because you owe it to yourself to take care of yourself. But look how it's affecting other people. If you're not feeling good about things, all the people around you who are depending on you, if you're not there for them because you've got this issue going on, you're affecting their lives too. So, yeah, you got to take care of it when there's a problem.
So true. Well, dude, thanks so much for coming in, man.
Max, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited for your book, man. I hope it crushes Moonshot. It's and I feel like I've known about you for some time, because you're very active on social media, right? Like
I was the first dude to tweet from space.
Yeah,
first person to tweet from space.
That's so funny.
Take that, Neil Armstrong.
Take that.
Yeah.
So cool, man. Well, thanks for doing what you do.
Thanks, Max. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course.
Thanks for everything you're doing and helping people with whatever's going on in their lives too. Yeah. It's good stuff.
Yeah, anytime. One last question.
Yeah, go. Yeah, whatever you want to know.
But before we get to that, where can people find you on social media?
That's a good one.
Yeah.
So I have a website, MikeMassimino.com, and I have a Twitter account, Astro_Mike. I guess it's X now.
Yeah.
Instagram, Astro Mike Massimino, Facebook, LinkedIn.
All the places.
You can find me there. The website, there's a way you can contact me. You can also reach out on the social media channel. So
that's a dope Omega, by the way. Do they
like this?
Is that like a special thing that they get? Because I know that they do. They will gift watches, right? To because people wear them up in space, or is it just something that you personally?
No, see, we're a government operation, right? So we weren't allowed. The government ethics laws prohibit us from accepting gifts that are over $20.
Whoa, interesting.
So the Omega is a lot more than $20.
A lot
so
more,
Omega would have given us. This is not an Omega watch that I've worn in space, but so my first flight is you have these Omegas. They're part of your equipment, right?
Watches?
Watches are part of your equipment.
Interesting.
Yeah, but you had to get them back in. You had to turn the thing back in. It was a piece of flight crew equipment. You would get it to train with, so you get to wear this nice Omega. I think it was an X33 is what it was.
Are Omegas literally the watch that they send
It is
you up
the
to
watch.
space?
In fact, it is Omega. I see you got a nice watch. What are you wearing there?
This is a Rolly.
Yeah.
But I do really want an Omega.
All right, okay.
And I'll tell you why. It's for a very nerdy reason.
All right, well, back in, I think it was 1965, Omega became the official NASA watch because it was the only one that withstood all the tests they gave it. Like they would smash the crap out of it. The crystal is really good, and it's a great watch. So they wore them on the moon, right? There's the moon watch they wore. And they wore it doing spacewalks on the moon. They wore an Omega out there for spacewalking. So they had also a version of the Omega that you could fly on that we flew on the space shuttle that had mission elapsed time and other things on it.
So cool.
Now we were able to buy those things, right? And Omega would have given to us I think the government gets them like for $1, right?
Wow.
So
Jelly.
we could buy it, but not for $1. We had to pay full price.
Damn.
So I was like, forget this, I ain't doing it. And then we had the space shuttle accident, and I realized, I'm not. This might be my last flight. When I got my second flight, so I really wanted. What happened is that they said no, you have to pay full price. And then someone found somewhere that there's a military price for Omega. Like there's certain things they give discounts that are approved. It wasn't much, but it was something. And so some smart person at NASA said, wait a minute. The military personnel, they get a discount on these watches.
That's so cool.
Why can't these astronauts get them? And so NASA said, okay, you can get a discount.
Seriously?
So we got them at a small discount, but I bought a couple of them. One, wore them both in space, gave one to my son, and the other one I still have. And then when I left NASA, as you mentioned, you can start making some money. It's very strict. So I bought a moon watch, the kind they use on the moon.
Yeah.
And this one was a gift. It's called the Dark Side of the Moon.
That's what it's called.
My wife. One is my wife gave me that gift.
Wow. There's an exhibit actually happening in New York City right now called I think it's called Planet Omega.
I was there actually.
Oh, you were there?
Well, we did. I think it's in Chelsea.
It's in Chelsea. Yeah.
So I was there. I hosted a panel.
Oh, amazing!
This is cool, man. You would have loved this. I think it was 2 weeks ago. I was the host for the panel, and we had Charlie Duke, who's one of the 4 remaining guys alive that walked on the moon.
Wow!
And he's the youngest person ever to be on the moon. He's 88 years old now. So he was the youngest out of the 12, and he's still alive. So he was there. My friend Nicole Stott was there. Peggy Whitson, my astronaut classmate, and my friend Mike Lopez Alegria. So I was the panel host for these.
Dude.
So Mega World, whatever it was.
That's awesome.
They had like a space night. Yeah, they had some cool nights.
Yeah.
Different nights going on there. They had like a James Bond night.
Well, that's my thing. Yeah, I'm a huge James Bond fan. And so that's, I think, a major reason why I want to get an Omega.
Yeah.
But I just haven't taken the
James
plunge.
James Bond, the astronauts. Yeah.
So cool. I had no idea that they were like the official watch.
That's it. Yeah, no, it's a piece of flight crew equipment. And they withstood all the tests back in the 60s, and they still do. So it's a piece of flight crew equipment.
That's so cool.
Very important. Yeah.
That's so cool.
So you get to use them for your flight, but if you want to keep it, you got to buy it. If you're a NASA guy now. Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
If anybody listening has any contact at Omega, hook your boy up.
I can hook you up, but they'll make you pay full price.
How is that a hookup?
The Omega store. I can introduce you to the guy.
Got it.
Make you pay. Yeah.
Got it. Yeah. There's definitely some James Bond watches that I would love to own, but haven't taken the plunge just yet. Anyway, last question. Yeah,
go ahead. What else you got?
I love it. What is living a genius life mean to you?
Well, I think when you think of genius, we think of I think of like Albert Einstein, but I don't think that's where you're going, right?
No, man. As I said at the outset,
I think I don't know if I would think if you use the word like thinking of it as like living smartly, or I think it's appreciating every moment we have here, and for me, understanding that we live in a paradise. And as I'm getting older, I'm not like really old yet, but I'm getting older. I'm happy to have been here as long as I have, but I hope there's a long time left, and every day is precious that we have here. When I looked at our planet, I had this this thought that I mentioned earlier, that I felt like I'm looking into heaven. I was looking into a paradise. That first I thought this is the view from heaven, and I thought, no, this is what heaven must look like. And Jim Lovell, who I've mentioned a couple of times, was the Apollo 13 commander portrayed by Tom Hanks in the Apollo 13 movie. And he was in New York a few years ago, and I spent the day with him. We were doing some stuff at the Explorers Club. I got to interview him. It was great. And I told him, we were talking about that, viewing the planet, and he said to me, he goes, Mike, a lot of people hope one day that when they pass, when they die, they'll go to heaven. He said, I'm convinced we were all born there. I think we're in a really special place, and there's opportunity for happiness. We talked earlier, there's a lot of crap going on, but we have great opportunities for happiness and love in our life, and to try to fulfill whatever our passion is, get involved with whatever it is that we want to get involved with, whatever's important to us. Things that can be important to other people may not be important to us, to that individual. I think that's okay. We're all different. For me, it was a space program. Is that the most important thing going on in the world? No, but it's the most important thing in my brain or my heart, my soul. So I think it's finding that, admitting to yourself what you're passionate about, trying to pursue it as best you can, and think of this planet as a paradise that we're living in, and try to take advantage of it as much as we can, despite all the crap that's going on.
Yeah.
Try to keep that thought, keep that big picture in mind.
Yeah. And acknowledge that there is crap going on, and if you can leave the world a little bit better, then you found it.
That's the other thing there, Max. One of the things that hit me on one of my spacewalks, I think this was on my third spacewalk. As you come around the planet, this 17,500 miles an hour, it's 90 minutes for a complete orbit, 45 minutes in sunlight, beautiful bright sunlight, and 45 minutes in darkness, the darkest dark I've ever experienced. You need helmet lights to see what you're doing in front of you. But you go through every 45 minutes. So you get a sunrise or a sunset every 45 minutes, 16 sunrises, 16 sunsets in a 24-hour period. And you can feel the warmth of the sun or the cold of the darkness before you see it. It's kind of like if you're in the ocean or in the water, you get like that kind of cold or warmth in your bones. You feel it down in your bones. That's what it feels like. So you'll feel the warmth. And it was this one pass, this one orbit where I felt it, and I had the opportunity to just look and wait for it. And then you come around the corner and you see the sun in a black sky. It looks like a big star. And then I look back at the planet, and what you see at that moment is what we call the terminator. It's the day-night line. And on the right side, it's bright sunlight. On the right and the left side, it's darkness. And that line moves across the planet, right? It's the rotation of the Earth that you're looking at. The sun isn't going anywhere. The sun's coming up tomorrow. We're going to rotate toward the sun tomorrow. The sun's not going anyplace. But this dance that's going on with the sun and the stars and the moon and everything else that's out there has been going on for a long time. And the thing that hit me, Max, is one moment looking at that line moving, which is the rotation but that line just tracking across the Earth, was the word that went through my mind. The thought was permanence. That this was such a steady motion. It's the steadiest motion I've ever seen in my life. Didn't hiccup, it didn't pause, didn't speed up or slow down. It just kept moving. This colossal planet, this beautiful planet, just rotating out there in space. And it came to me that what had been taught since we were kids, this has been going on a long time. Billions of years this has been going on. And it's going to go on for a long time after. And we are just here at that moment. Now, this is our moment now that we are here. There were people before us. Now it's our turn to do the best we can, and then turn it over to the kids or wherever else is there in the million years that follow. We're not going to be here forever. So that hit me. And I think about that quite often too, that Earth, our planet's going to keep spinning, man. We're only here for a little bit of time. Let's make the most of it that we can, and hopefully leave it in a better spot, as you said, a better place than we found it.
Beautiful, man. I love that.
That's kind of poetic. It shocked me. You got it out of me, man. I don't know how it happened.
Bro, you're a poet. And you just don't know it.
Yeah. Thanks.
Clearly. So cool, man. I love your perspective. Thanks for bringing it to the Genius Life.
Thanks for having me, man.
The Genius Life first. You're the man. Hey, if you liked that video, you need to check out this one here, and I'll see you there.